The recent assassination of political commentator Charlie Kirk sent shockwaves through the nation, not only because of the act itself, but because of the why behind it. So how do we recognize threats before they happen? Can we trust our gut? Or does it sometimes lead us dangerously astray? Joining us today is Dr. Mary Ellen O'Toole, former FBI profiler and one of the world's leading experts on criminal behavior. In her book, Dangerous Instincts: How Gut Feelings Betray Us, she argues that our instinct, while useful, can often cloud our judgment, especially in moments of fear, emotion, or political bias. Dr. O'Toole, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
If you folks would like to join the conversation, you can call or text us at 713-440-8870. I guess I'd like to start with, then we can go back into more of the nuts and bolts of it all, but we're in such a world where rush to judgment is so quick. We need to know something immediately, and we go into that. But also, on the other hand, time is of the essence in cases like this. Am I correct?
Time is of the essence, but this kind of behavior that we're seeing, which involves predatory violence, it involves a lot of planning, that kind of thing, that happens over a period of days, weeks, months, and sometimes even years. So it's during that period of time where there are what we call warning behaviors that begin to manifest themselves. And sometimes the only people that might see these warning behaviors are coworkers or fellow students or family members. So this kind of behavior is not what the general public often describes as snapping behavior. So someone was fine yesterday and they just snapped today. That's not what underlies this kind of behavior. So there is time in there to recognize the warning behaviors, but that requires intervention and the knowledge of what some of the warning behaviors actually are.
Yeah. Quickly there, too. Do we thwart a lot of these efforts? Has the FBI been successful in making these things never happen? Or is it still we keep getting caught not knowing?
No, they do. The FBI, the Secret Service, your wonderful law enforcement agencies down there in Texas, they're really very highly trained individuals, and they do work closely with your school system down there and all over the country. And so the teams in schools, the threat assessment teams, the law enforcement teams, and the federal agencies have been receiving remarkable training over the last probably 25 years since Columbine, actually. And so they are able to intercede and to actually prevent some of these.
Dr. O'Toole, I have a really naive question. What is the dark web? I hear about it all the time. Is it really a place that people go and search out different kind of groups, or is it the groups themselves that are called the dark web? I mean, is it a real place?
That's a great question, and I'm not an expert in the dark web, but I can tell you it's both. It's going to a site online that most other people wouldn't even know how to access. And it's being in contact with other people that might share your ideas about committing an act of violence, or some other kind of, let's say, sexual perversion, to normalize their behavior. But it's a place where they can go and they can routinely normalize behavior that 25 years ago could not happen.
So it's not like a .com, darkweb.com. I mean, it's these sites that sort of bring these people together, I guess. Does the FBI monitor these? I would think.
They do, and so do a lot of law enforcement agencies. But if you think about it like this, there are so many sites that open up, and they're available to people, and then they increase or they shut them down. So to monitor everything 24/7 would really be a Herculean task. It's not possible. Just to be frank with you, it's not possible. Mm-hmm. So they do the best that they can. But again, that's why understanding these warning behaviors, because once somebody has been on the internet, let's say 10 hours a day, and I don't use that number rashly. And here's why I tell you this. The FBI actually did the first research on school shootings back in 1999 and 2000. And it was hard to find 18 cases. It was difficult. I had to go back into the 1970s. I was very well aware of Charles Whitman, but there were so many years in between where we looked and looked for these kinds of school and mass shootings. We pulled everybody together physically at a secret place in the DC area in the year 2000. And we said, tell us how these shooters are preparing for planning out these cases. And even though we didn't have the internet at that time, we did have violent videos. And we found that the shooters in these 18 cases, Columbine made 19, in these cases spent 8 to 10 hours a day engaged in these violent videos. Now, jump ahead 25 years. You can only imagine what some of these individuals are doing to normalize their thinking about mass shooting and killing other people, normalizing that hatred that many of them have. It's probably many, many hours a day, probably more than 8 to 10, where they can engage in conversations and normalize thinking patterns and planning that we had no knowledge of prior to Columbine, and you would have a heck of a time doing prior to the shooting at Columbine High School.
Now, Dr. O'Toole, I find this conversation fascinating. And when I looked at your book, I was immediately intrigued because so often growing up, we're told, listen to your gut instinct. But your book says, how your gut betrays us. So explain to me how that works exactly.
Yes, it's kind of weird, isn't it? I get that question a lot and I get that comment a lot. But here's what I mean by that. People tend to think that we are born with this internal barometer that just tells us that that person's dangerous and that person's okay. This situation is dangerous, but run away from this situation. We are not born with an internal barometer. It's something that is based on your experiences in life. But here's what I've seen go wrong over looking at violent crimes and working as an FBI agent and an FBI profiler for so many years. Oftentimes people use the wrong criteria to assess for violence. So someone might look at someone and say, well, that person's a member of the clergy. Well, that person has a PhD. That person has a really good job. They couldn't possibly harm me. They couldn't possibly be violent. Or people will make the assertion that, well, that person is so nice. They're so outgoing and they're so friendly. They couldn't possibly be that serial killer. We don't have a lot of serial killers now compared to what we did in the 70s and 80s. But those were the kinds of criteria that people use and continue to use to assess whether or not somebody could hurt them or hurt their family. So when I was asked to write the book, I kept track over the years of how we make mistakes in assessing people. So I'm trying to correct it, not to make people think that they can't really use this assessment tool a little bit better, but the criteria that has to go into that toolbox must be correct.
Two things I want to hit on right here. First of all, you had mentioned earlier warning signs and just things that people should keep in mind when they look at children, colleagues, friends that don't indicate definitely something is going to happen, but things that should alert people. What should we be looking for?
Well, the research on the warning signs has been really specifically to people that are thinking about carrying out a mass shooting. And one of these behaviors, which has been very prominent since the 70s and the 80s, and even at Columbine, and then past 1999 and 2000, and we see it even today, is a concept called leakage, like a leaky faucet. It's called leakage. And leakage is when the shooter tells somebody ahead of time what they're going to do. I didn't see that in other crimes that I worked, like bank robberies or white collar crime. People kept their mouth shut. Well, in these kinds of cases, leakage is incredibly valuable. And nowadays, leakage has taken on a whole new concept. So people will post something, a comment or information online, or they will, excuse me, they'll tell somebody, they'll send an email, they'll actually say, this is what they plan to do. Prior to that, it was a lot more subtle, but that whole concept of leakage cannot be underscored enough. And here's what's happening, though. People that might hear the leakage would say, oh, Mary Ellen doesn't really mean that. Oh, she was just having a bad day. She doesn't really mean that. We have to take leakage very seriously, because there's nothing in the world of threat assessment that tells us if somebody says this a certain way, you can just rule them out. They're probably not going to do it. Leakage has to be evaluated by a trained threat assessor to make sure that there's nothing that is going on in their background to suggest that they actually are planning to carry out an act of violence. So leakage is insight into the individual. Most of the time, once a threat assessment is done, that threat assessor, that law enforcement person can say, this is a very low threat. They were just trying to act, get attention. They didn't intend to carry out. They don't intend to carry out. But we don't have a magic formula. We have to take all those threats very seriously.
Is that leakage a cry for help?
That's such a good question. By some people, it could be. By other people, it may not be. What I've seen kind of evolve over time, which is really frightening in a lot of ways, is that people that are engaged in this kind of behavior often get very excited. They're very proud of what they're going to do. It's not really a cry for help or a cry to, hey, stop me before I go too far. I would say it could have been 25 years ago, but nowadays this leakage and this addressing what their future actions are oftentimes, unfortunately, to brag about it and get attention.
This kind of leads into my next question. So this answer may have kind of answered it a little bit. But over time, especially in today's environment, we talk more about the political rhetoric people are putting out there and all of those concerns. Has the landscape changed in which you're looking for these factors to identify someone who may be potentially dangerous? Has that shifted with this political rhetoric, or is the rhetoric just a smokescreen and the exact same behaviors are still the same behaviors?
No, the rhetoric really has, I think, caused a big shift, and it's very it's very easy to get caught up in and be significantly influenced by this idea that there is an us against them situation, landscape that's taking place around us. It's me against you. It's him against her, but that us against them mentality really reinforces people that think the only way that I can resolve that I have this enemy is, especially if I've developed this very dark emotion, which is called hatred. Hatred is not anger. Hatred is a very cold emotion in which you have enemies. And the only thing to do with someone that you hate is to completely move away, get away from them, or to annihilate them, to kill them. So that us against them mentality is doing some, in my opinion, some significant damage to people that are already thinking about acting out in a violent way and have already kind of developed these different outlooks towards people that may have this religion, people that go to this school, people that work these kinds of jobs. So you can already see that sort of separation of it's me against you. And that can really increase or augment their level of violence or their decision to act out in a violent way.
I know we are just about out of time. I don't know if this is a fair question or not. Hate crimes play into all of this. Yes or no? Is that a concept that it's at play in this or not?
It depends on what you mean by a hate crime. A hate crime is a legal term to identify how a case will ultimately be prosecuted. But if you're talking about does hate as an emotion motivate this crime, then yes, I would say that it does in some cases.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Mary Ellen O'Toole is a former FBI profiler and author. Dr. Mary Ellen, thank you so much for joining us today on Hello Houston.